Hi, I'm Mary Beth Jacobs, and today I'm going to show you how to do a purl stitch. I have a companion video of a knit stitch, and this is going to be along the same lines. It'll go well with that video. I'm working with worsted weight yarn and a needle that is appropriate to that yarn, and I will go ahead and switch to my other camera. I have a long tail cast on here. I have a different video that shows you how to make this, but you can see in a nutshell where I started my cast on. There's no yarn hanging on, and I work from right to left. And at the end of my cast on, I have the yarn tail, and then I have the other working yarn, which is connected to the ball toward the back. In knitting, again, we work from right to left. So I need to turn my work in order to be set up to begin purling. I have my working yarn here at the right, and I'm going to first show you how to do this holding the working yarn in my right hand, and that's going to be English knitting or throwing. The first thing that you'll want to notice is that my stitch is properly hitched, meaning that it is traveling from the right leg of the stitch is in the front and it travels over the needle to the back. Okay, so if I kind of pull this down, you can see that my right leg is to the front and my left leg is toward the back. So the first thing I'm going to do, if I were to do a knit stitch here, I would be entering from front to back. But I'm going to be doing purl. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be entering from back to front. And that's what that looks like, back to front. And then I'm going to take my working yarn and I am going to wrap around, pull through, and drop the old stitch off the needle. I'm going to enter from back to front, wrap the stitch around, pull through, and drop the old stitch off the needle. Again, entering from back to front, wrap around, pull through, and drop the old stitch off the needle. You'll notice that when I finish my purl stitch, my working yarn is to the front of the needle. It was the exact opposite when I did my knit stitch. My working yarn was to the back. But when I do a purl, entering from back to front, wrap around, drop off the needle, my working yarn is to the front. Now I'm going to switch which hand tensions my yarn, excuse me, and I'm going to switch it to my left hand. And the first thing that you'll notice, just like with the knit stitch, when I go to do this, you can see I'm basically setting up my working yarn so that it's almost like part of the way through that wraparound motion. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to enter again from back to front. And then I'm going to wrap around, pull through, and drop the stitch from the needle. And you can see my, just like before, my working yarn is to the front. And then enter from back to front, wrap around, and pull through. And then drop the old stitch off. Back to front, wrap around, pull through, and drop the old one off the needle. You'll kind of notice that I move my working yarn out of the way a little bit when and then I wrap it around, pull through, and drop off the needle. And again, back to front, wrap around, pull through, and drop the old one off the needle. Okay. Let me switch back to my right hand so you can see the English or throwing. And I'll get back to the Continental again. So, whoa, do you see what happened here? When I do a purl stitch, my working yarn is oriented to the front, but when I switched hands, my working yarn went under the needle to the back. Okay, I have to bring it forward. If I don't, one of the mistakes that will often happen is say I keep it back there and I go through to make my purl and I go to wrap around. You see what I did? I have an extra piece of yarn here. I made a yarn over. It's not a correctly made yarn over, but it is a yarn over. And it would be very confusing. When I go back to work it, I'd probably make an extra stitch and a hole. So you always want to make sure, just like when you're doing your knit stitches, that the yarn is properly oriented. So I'm going to go from back to front, wrap around, pull through. Enter from back to front, wrap around, and pull through. Then I'm going to pause. I'm going to do it again, back to front, wrap around. And you see, as I'm doing the motion to wrap around, if I were to have my yarn tensioned in my left hand, it's like I've completed part of that motion already, just by the way that the yarn is tensioned. So that's why it looks different, even though it's the exact same maneuver. Back to front, wrap around, pull through, and drop off the needle. Okay. I'll go back to the Continental so you can see that one again. Again, this is tensioned in my left hand. It's called Continental or picking, and I've got the yarn oriented almost like part of the way through the swoop. So I'm going to go from back to front, wrap around, pull through, drop off the needle. Just like with the knit stitch, the stitch I'm working into has to be properly oriented on the needle, which means the right leg has to be coming from the front right, traveling across to the back. Let me show you what it looks like if I get it in the wrong direction. So here I have some stockinette stitch. And if you see here, my working yarn is to the left, and I work from right to left when I knit. So I have to turn my work around so I'm oriented. And this is stockinette. So this is the purl bump side. So let me go ahead and I'll do this, the first few stitches English, or throwing. Oopsie. And I'll wrap around, pull through, and drop my stitch off the needle. I'll enter from back to front, wrap around, pull through, drop off the needle, enter from back to front, wrap around. So it's the same motion no matter where I am, whether I'm at the cast on edge or if I'm in the body of the work. And what would happen if I just purled every single round? Well, the same thing that would happen if I knit every single round. I'd make garter stitch. Most people would not care to make garter stitch by purling every round, but you could. So let me switch which way I hold my yarn. I'm putting it into my left hand so I can do continental or picking. And again, just like at the cast on edge, I'm going to enter back to front, wrap the yarn around, pull through, drop off the needle. Okay, so I want to take a look at the stitch orientation. So again, it's easier to see when there's more knitting behind it, but I've got my right leg traveling from bottom right over the top of the needle to back left. But let me switch the orientation so it's not correct. So here it is. This is now the right leg is behind and it's going in the opposite direction. Okay, so let's say I purl this. Let's say I make a mistake and I have this here and I don't catch it and I purl it. So I'm just gonna grab that front leg because that's what it looks like. And I'm gonna wrap around and pull through and drop off the needle. It's really difficult to see, isn't it? On the wrong side. It's hard to see. If I really pull, I can see it a little bit, that one looks open and that, but it's very challenging to see. Okay. But if I look over, I turn my work around and I look on my right side, it's easier to see. So you can see here, there's a stitch that's nice and open right there. And it looks like almost like two parallel lines. And then this was the one that's twisted. And you see it looks like a little X. Okay. So it's good to check your work, especially on the right side, because it's difficult to see that on the wrong side. Okay, so let me undo that. And let me orient that stitch correctly. So let me put that right leg to the front. Okay. And I'm going to enter back to front, wrap around, pull through, and drop the stitch off the needle. Back to front, wrap around, pull through, drop the stitch off the needle. Back to front, wrap around, pull through, drop the stitch off the needle. Let me finish off this so we can take a look. So there's that row of purl stitches, and it's set on top of a row of knit stitches. So this is the stockinette that we get.